Well, it's November the 29th. I just heard President Trump's interview with Maria Bartiromo. And so I guess here we're at an interesting crossroads. The really asinine decision by the three-judge panel in Pennsylvania, which really didn't seem to understand the case that was even being made and rejected the appeal, when in fact all they really were appealing was for a right to amend their original case, basically, and to hold up the process until they could present it. It seems like at that moment the case is caught in this bizarre, catch-22 type scenario where, on the one hand, they say, well, you haven't presented evidence, but on the other hand, what we're asking for is an evidentiary hearing so we can present evidence. And then they say, but we haven't seen the evidence because you haven't had the hearing. So it's one of those kind of things. However, this does give the Trump people entree to the Supreme Court. They have a viable case, that is, to appeal to the Supreme Court based on Pennsylvania decision of the three-judge panel. The question is whether this is it's timely to do this or to wait to see how Lynn Wood's case down in Georgia goes through the appellate court down there, because he's got to the appellate level. And with his case, we also have the Kraken cases in Georgia and Michigan are at the district court levels. And those seem to be full of evidence, actually. So we'll have to see whether or not they can get a fair hearing or not also. In other words, what I'm trying to say is if one of the lower courts were to actually decide favorably for President Trump's appeal, then it would be much more likely that the Supreme Court would seem to me to accept the case. I think the other problem seems to me is that the Trump people seem to be having trouble developing a clear message. Just witness the interview with Maria Bartiromo. The president was all over the place in that interview rather than going in with a concise set of points of why his case should be heard and kind of be more accepted to, let's say, people other than his own core supporters. To us, of course, we're behind him 100%, but you have to think about, appealing to people that really aren't a core supporter. And I think that's an important thing to think about there. So that's the question that's really before the Trump team at this point, is whether to make their first pass at the Supreme Court now. Or, for instance, Sean Parnell's was making progress in the lower court, but of course the incredibly biased, Democrat-dominated and totally partisan state Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, which is a disgrace. I'm going to sound like the president on that one, but he's absolutely right on that. That could be the basis to go ahead and go into the federal system. Now, I don't know whether they would make a first pass at the Supreme Court itself and just say, look, the time is running out and the case will be moot unless you go ahead and hear it now, or whether they want to go to district court and again try to work their way up the ladder, which will take days. And we really haven't got a good feel for what would happen if they go to Alito and ask for some sort of stay at this point. Will he do it or will he won't do it? Will he pass? If he does it, will the rest of the court then meet and overrule him, or will they support him? We haven't really. The Supreme Court is kind of the trump card here for Trump. How to say, if he doesn't win on that one, then we've got a situation where the electoral machinery is already in place to install Joe Biden as president, and that's the situation, because December the 8th is coming up shortly. That's the day that they pick the electors according to plan, and of course the 14th is when they vote. And so that's kind of where we are at this point in this situation. They are getting a hearing out in Nevada, and I guess if they could flip Nevada in a hypothetical scenario, and that would be hopeful. The other thing that's being discussed a lot is the idea, if you can simply get a stay and prevent the electors from voting, then you could end up with a contested election, which we could presumably would win in the House. So, and that's been an idea I've thrown out a long time before some other people started talking about it, I think. It's kind of an idea on what we might do. So I guess kind of where we are right now. Another thing Linwood, I really support what he's doing with the case in the appellate court in Georgia, but quit talking negatively about the people in Georgia. I mean, they have their own issues. There are other issues. There is a viable plan B if we fail here, and we don't want to throw that away. I mean, and if Trump were to manage to prevail, he'll need the support of the 2 senators from Georgia also who support Trump and who Trump is supporting. So let's, this internecine fighting there. I don't know what the governor can really do at this point. The attorney, obviously, the Secretary of State of Georgia really messed up. There's no doubt about it. He should have continued to fight Stacey Abrams and the Democrats on how the election was going to be conducted in court rather than making a deal. And I don't know what led to that. Was his perception that the courts would rule against him and it would be a worse deal than he'd get if he just made the deal he could make, or this, I don't know. But I do think it's a sad situation, and we need to start proactively, going after the issue in local courts to make sure this time the poll watchers can be in there, that they won't be kept so far back that things can happen. And again, the Linwood documents, along with the ones with Sidney Powell, I mean, if we could actually get in those ballot boxes and find these fake ballots that have been discussed and count them, that could be very decisive. I mean, unlike a lot of things, that is pretty cut and dried once you identify fake ballots that are printed by machine, if they exist. And yet I don't see that enough stress it's more like we're doing this global assault on everything. But to some degree, we need to focus on a few key points and try to actually win on those points. And that seems to be what seems to be missing is an attempt to move the entire front and the battlefield forward everywhere, rather than concentrating on the key points of vulnerability and actually breaking through and taking a major objective. So, use a military analogy here. So at any rate, and another thing. I saw a lot of people that are talking about, trashing Fox News or hating Fox News. I agree that the political group of Fox News and the news part of Fox News has not been helpful. I think they're pathetic in a lot of ways. And why are they not investigating some of these claims a little bit more aggressively? I mean, regardless of what the outcome of that investigation is, it would seem to me as journalists, one would want to know the facts. And nobody seems to want to really look at it. But on the other hand, the organization itself, I think, has a bit of a laissez-faire attitude toward different shows. So what you get with Maria Bartiromo here, that voted almost entirely to the Trump cause today, you get, Mark Levin, supports Trump strongly, and so forth. And I think your lineup of Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham are supportive of Trump. And it isn't necessarily unsupportive of Trump to admit that the machinery that is in place right now will likely install Joe Biden as president. I mean, right now, I think that the secretaries of state have certified the votes for enough votes, plus those in uncontested states, that there's no contest in New York or California, etc., that he'll be above 270. And unless some entity, a Supreme Court or some court or some legislature actually derails this, it's going to happen. That's not betraying Trump. That's just admitting reality. You don't support the cause by denying reality. The question is, how can we get those courts or those legislatures to actually step up and do what needs to be done? And that's in the short time available. And that's what we have to work on. So I just want to mention that. I think that, I watch OAN myself. When Trump was having a rally and Fox would cut away from it, I just switch over to OAN and watch it, So as an example, or Newsmax has got some very good shows. So I'm not knocking. It's good to have a more diversity, so we're not relying totally on Fox. But at the same time, I understand there's a lot of goodness in Fox, and there's a lot of badness. Remember, it was always supposed to be fair and balanced. Well, not about fair, but it has a balance to it. There's certainly Democrats there, Chris Wallace, for example. And so I think that, it is what it is. It's a source of information, and it has some really good positive shows for us. and for the conservative movement. And by the way, other than that, I think a lot of people just have come to the conclusion that they're doubtful that the system is really going to actually stop what's happening here. And therefore, they're wanting to get, I still think it's worth fighting at the moment because we haven't even had one serious pass at the Supreme Court yet. And so I think that's something that we're waiting to see what happens. But I think we want to have our best case together when we make that move, because that may be our last gasp. On the legislatures, I still stick with my opinion. While there is some activity and some interest in the legislatures intervening, I'm still dubious that you're going to get a majority vote to actually do it. There's too many weak people to actually do this, I think. I mean, well, hey, if they do it, that's another thing. But I'm trying to be realistic on it. But I think the one thing that if they do manage to end up installing Joe Biden as president, I think there's no doubt this is a tainted election affair, and I have a feeling that Donald Trump will continue to pursue this and will hold them to account for what they did. And I think over time it's going to come out because the people that did this probably are going to have to start bragging about what they did. And I think that that's just the way that the criminal mind is, and eventually, it's going to come out. So the problem is, will it come out in time to save Trump's presidency? And that's what we're fighting for. Well, okay, that's about it for now. On Parler, if anybody gets this far into it, I've run into some weird trouble of posting these videos. I don't know whether it's Parler blocking them because they want me to go to Rumble. I mean, I've already got an account established here and some purposes for it. Or is it just because I'm not badged yet? I've applied for the badge. I fought for about a week and a half to get the application accepted, and then it told me it had to look at it manually or something. And so I've been waiting for a response, and probably that's just going to take time with all the incredible numbers of people that are signing up for Parler. So but you can watch these things at the moment if you click where the paperclip is, beside the paperclip. That's the way to get them on there. And the best thing would be go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel and give me a like, because apparently that helps it spread on YouTube. And I may very well set up a Rumble account. I haven't got around to that yet, and I got to upload the videos on both, I guess, if that makes them happy. I don't know, or whether it's just because of the posting thing. I mean, originally they said you couldn't post on the comments if you weren't badged yet, so I started posting on my main thing, and that went well for a while, and now that's not going. So I don't know what the deal is there. But we'll wait to find out, I guess. So that's all for now. And until next time, we'll see what happens next week. Things are probably going to start moving pretty quick now, I assume, on some of these other cases.